Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me for another show on Gehan Couray's Meeting of the Minds. I'm an actor, independent filmmaker, classical baritone singer who lives in Los Angeles, and while I'm down here in Colombo, the city where I grew up, I'm delighted to be hosting this talk show, which is a very unique talk show because I choose my guests and we discuss a wide range of subjects, everything from drama, music, literature, all the way through psychology, philosophy, religion and spirituality, to contemporary life issues which come up, or life issues, as Jith Pieris, our guest here, would say, because he's lived in London for 12 years and another 2 years in Boston. His English is impeccable. And ladies and gentlemen, I must say our guest today is very special for a number of reasons. Not only has he been a mentor to me over the past 15 years, he is also a neighbor of mine. He lives right across the street from where we are. This is, of course, Jetwing Colombo 7, one of our family hotels. I live down the street here, down the lane actually. We're down Ward Place. Jith Pieris is our eminent Ward Place neighbor. I literally have to cross the street and I'm at his home. And I've spent literally thousands of hours over the past so many years talking to him at length about various different subjects, everything from the performing arts to politics and every conceivable topic. You name it, I've discussed it with Mr. Jith Pieris. And you know, Jith, one of the challenges for me was deciding what to discuss with you because, you know, it's like an ocean of knowledge that you have, and I think let's maybe start with something that is very close to both our hearts, which is American musical theater.
I loved it.
Yes. And what I would specifically like to know, Jith, is, ladies and gentlemen, he and I have a particular affinity for the old American musicals. Usually when people think of the old American musicals, they think we're talking about The Sound of Music and My Fair Lady, but those are from the late 50s and 1960s, but we're talking about musicals that go way back to the 1920s and even before in certain instances. So why do you think, Jith, those old-fashioned musicals are so special?
One particular reason is that it portrays the simplicity of life. You see? Never complicated. They don't have any extra unnecessary things about it. It's a very simple life, and on the songs too. And those songs have become everyday songs even today. There are a lot of musicals have been adopted from that. You see? Take, for example, the great musical Showboat. Now, I don't know whether people have forgotten about it, but things like that went on and on and on for 30 years, you see, without a break. Then now they haven't had for a long time. Like that, then I thought about another little musical, American in Paris. At the time, extremely popular in Europe too, you see. But now, of course, it's a different world, and but in America at the moment, when it's trying to recover from and it's going to portray itself as the wonderful country, when I think there's one place to start is from its musicals and its music in general, you see. And after all, they are a country which produced Elvis Presley and the dancer, what is now Elvis Presley, for example, can never be imitated.
Right.
You see?
Right.
Now, so there is something extraordinary about it.
Yes.
And the American musicals are definitely here to stay and have been in the minds of people over the years.
Yes.
And the other thing I wish to say at the same time is this old, maybe it's a bad word to use, the spirituals.
Yes.
Yes. They used to call it Negro spirituals. That's not the word I
they
like
don't
to
use
use.
the word Negro nowadays because.
And
yes.
so, like for example, My Old Kentucky Home. You see, it's world over. It is almost an anthem in the globe. Yes. I remember many years ago when the great Chow and Lai was visiting, when Nixon was visiting China, in the dinner, the orchestra played my old Kentucky Home, and everybody was amazed with Chow and Lai was keeping time with his knee, with his foot.
In China?
So, yeah, in China.
Oh my gosh.
In revolutionary China. You see, because he also knew that.
Right,
You see?
right.
And today, that song is one of the biggest sporting events in this world today, is the Kentucky Derby.
Yes.
And it starts off with that beautiful song. You see? It's
Right.
the whole thing, and then they garland the horse with a rose garland, the winner. You see, now those are things which are, which is fundamental to our life, I would think,
Yes.
Even in from the Western world, we have our own contributions. In the East, it's a different thing, but since we are on that topic, I prefer.
And what's remarkable, Jith, is, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that those old musicals harken back to a simpler time, a more innocent time,
Yes.
where the emphasis was on romance, not so much on sexualized relationships, which is something very important to me, because even in my feature film, The Billionaire, we talk about chaste and pure romances without the sex. Jith, I think...
sex is there with a hint of it.
yes.
That's what is. That's why it was exciting. That is what it's all about.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
The beauty of the direction of those, they never went beyond a certain amount, because the rest is left to your imagination. What more do you want in life?
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
Instead of having the stark real thing.
Yes.
Mankind was not made for that.
Yes.
Mankind was born with a brain to be used.
An imagination.
Imagination,
Right.
exactly.
And you
So-
insult our human intelligence and imagination when you
Yeah.
think that you have to put everything on the kitchen sink and
that's the thing.
in front of
Yes,
you, right?
Yes.
What are some of your favorite songs from the old musicals? Showboat has always been one of my favorites, Jith, because a lot of people think that Oklahoma by Rodgers and Hammerstein was the birth of modern American musicals, but Showboat was
Oklahoma too is something which I love that.
Oklahoma.
That also. And we've done it in Sri Lanka for 2 or 3 times, and every time they did it, it was immensely popular.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. About 2 schools, one in St. Thomas's, and this was a combination. We had Oklahoma, and Jerome has done it, and I have done excerpts from it. And Oklahoma, that's one, and Marian, of course.
Of course.
Have a great contribution. And Oklahoma, look at that. It's all about that time.
Right.
And yet, it's worldwide. But what is Sri Lanka? What connection has Sri Lanka with
Oklahoma?
Yeah.
And yet our
Audience loved it. They know it.
Yes.
You see? Even though we are Western educated, we are educated in the British way of life, this thing has crept into our society in a big way.
Yes.
You see?
Who doesn't know, oh, what a beautiful morning.
That's right. Yeah. There you are.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's more innocent than that?
Yeah.
And, the thing is, I think, Jith, you had mentioned to me that Showboat, which I think was written and went on the boards of the Broadway stages in the 1920s,
Yes,
at least 15 years before Oklahoma.
No, because it's all the kids, the cold clothes were in 1920s.
1920s.
Yeah, those are as you know, the best time of European clothing.
Yes, yes.
That's the best period, and it's based on that.
And didn't you say, Jith, that you saw Showboat performed on a showboat?
Yes, that was very nice. That was on a showboat in Kentucky, and it sailed through with half the musical, and the rest of the half, they stopped it. We had to get down, and the musical continued with the background of the actual the showboat.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was a lovely thing. And I'll tell you something else. It seems to be coming back in a big way, because now everything is done electronically. The old sets.
Wow.
For these grand American musicals.
Right.
My God, it's the limit of your imagination.
Right.
Manoj Shanmugam is one who has helped me right through my career of theatre here, and he used to help me immensely with sets. I liked him very much because I didn't have to go and explain details. I mean, Mano, I want Venice on stage. I don't have to ask him what to put in it.
Right.
If I do, I get a good scolding. So I don't. Now all I say, Mano, I need Venice on stage. You see, or Mano, I need the New York Underground on stage. Right. The New York Underground, and there you are. He has it.
Right.
Or Broadway. I was there several times. Manu has done Broadway sets for me.
And you know,
sets was a part of theatre, big part of theatre. Nowadays they do all sorts of gimmickry with the lighting and this and that, and you know the I don't know I think I simply to use it, the beauty of theatre and the love for theatre. Those are the things were part of it, very much a part of it. You see.
And you know, because of course, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are overseas, Jith Pieris is one of Sri Lanka's preeminent theatrical producers and actors and directors. He's one of the most colourful theatrical personalities we have in this country. And on that subject of, you know, building authentic sets, Jith, as a follow-up to that, I wanted to ask you, you know, I've always admired you for being a stickler for authenticity, not only when it comes to the sets on stage, but also when it comes to, for example, Shakespeare productions. You know, you've directed many Sri Lankan school productions of Shakespeare. And you've mentioned to me, you know, Gehan, Romeo and Juliet, for example, Juliet is only 14 years old, and yet, I mean, I know you're very peeved when, shall we say, actresses who are decidedly not 14 attempt to play this very innocent girl who has fallen in love for the first time. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yes, that's actually, it's not only my problem. I've been reading about it. And immediately, obviously, in a school production, you have to pick a girl of about 18, so that's the age they are available to the theatre. And they come into the stage, and I teach them how they should act as a 14. First, I tell them she was that age, and there are certain things which 14-year-olds do.
Certain mannerisms?
Yes, mannerisms. And my God, they rebel. They rebel. No, we can't do that. I said, why? Because they laugh at. I mean, you know, but they are 14-year-old already ever ready to pay a 40-year-old.
Yes.
But he will never get it the other way back. You know, it has been such a nuisance. I mean, the small little things, but they don't. And I've been reading about it. It seems to be a world over. You know, except of course in great films that we have seen in Romeo and Juliet, except that one. But then they are again when they were not 14.
Yes. But you know, ladies and
one girl was, no?
Olivia Hussey, I think.
Olivia Hussey,
right?
Yeah.
She was a teenager, exactly, very close to that.
That's right,
from the famous Franco Zeffirelli version of Romeo and Juliet. But actually, ladies and gentlemen, you know, Jith hit the nail on the head when he referred to the mannerisms of a 14-year-old, which, you know, there's a 1930s version of Romeo and Juliet with Norma Shearer playing Juliet. Even though she was in her 30s, she really epitomized that innocence and simplicity of a 14-year-old. You know, because Juliet is not a worldly woman, and even though Norma Shearer was in her 30s, you know, with her mannerisms, with her little gestures, with her vocal inflections, she did capture the essence of a 14-year-old, which I think is what...
Yes, that being the case, I mean, in so many things, that's what acting is all about, no?
Yes.
You see, one has to concentrate. That's why I press on my actors not to lose concentration in acting, because you must play the role of the character. That's part of the actually enjoyment also. You see, you're playing somebody else's character, and they've got to you do everything possible to, and study it.
Yes.
As you know, there are several wonderful Hollywood actors of yesteryear and at present who study a role.
Yes.
And in their autobiographies, they go on saying the things, the lengths they went to.
Right.
To
research.
Be a character, to do a research and be a character.
Yes.
You see, it may have been a simple thing as a butler in some place, or a cook in a restaurant, in an Eastern restaurant or something like that. My gosh, the lengths they go to. You see, sometimes they tell the director, no, I know, you have to give me time because I have to think about it and I've got to go into some place and watch them. And so that is what is acting all about. That is the part which, and a lot of the students and young people, those who follow it, much later on in years they come and tell me, now we really understand what you said at that time. Now that we appreciate it in the best possible way.
Because also, Jith, I feel like when you really take the time and the trouble to study another person and become that character, I think you sharpen your own empathy as a human being. And
of course you do.
Right?
Of course you do. That is the most important thing.
Yes.
Yeah, you do. Then you really feel and know the difficulties, the complications of life. Of course, that is it. And
I know you've always told me, Gehan, there's no point in journeying through life without going through the complications of life and the hassles of life.
Otherwise, what a bore.
Yes, what a bore indeed.
Yeah. So those who come back and go through life without any hassles, and I think it's a dreadful bore. They must be bored in the end of their life.
Yes.
The beauty of it is to go through difficulties and whatever it can come and rise again. That is what it's all about, you see.
And you know, Jith, I'll never forget some time ago, I think, when people were being critical, and of course people continue to be critical of us all the time.
Yes.
And I remember Jith once told me, Gehan, if you don't want any criticism, you should just live here in Ward Place. Don't go to Hollywood. Just stay here and go to Coco Veranda, which is the neighborhood coffee shop every day, and just come back home, you know, do nothing, be nothing, and no one will ever criticize you. And, you know...
That's right.
And actually, Jith, on that note, you know, you and I have had the great fortune of living overseas for a great part of our adult lives.
Yes.
I in the US, you primarily in London, but also in the US. Could you talk to our viewers about, you know, the level of enrichment that one receives when you live overseas?
Well, I don't know about most people, but I'm just telling what I'm thinking about myself. From the moment I landed in Britain, I've been with my parents before, but when I went in 1966, I mean, from the next day onwards, I started visiting museums. You see, in London, it's full of history. Every little avenue in lane from Kensington to East London to North London is full of history. Right. You see, I remember when I first saw a monument to Dick Whittington's cat. You see, somewhere in the north of London. So it fascinated me, and I followed up that. So then they did have Dick Whittington's house or whatever, and that he first worked in when he came to London. You see, so you see, especially when you live in the nation full of history. Same way of India. When I travel in India, my good, right. It's fabulous. You know, old Delhi to me is another wonderful place. My God, it mesmerizes me to think that old civilizations, and they have preserved those things.
Right.
India is not, and then of course not forgetting our own little beautiful little land.
Of course.
My gosh, when you think of the time periods that Anuradhapura was 1,000 years the capital. 1,000 years, a capital. You see, and you go around that, and it's very inspiring. And if I may again come back to Sri Lanka, just to tell you, you know, those the caves that we have are 1st century BC. That is our country. So in the same way, it's the historical interest and interest in so many things that from the day I landed in London, I used to go about that sort of thing. Of course, I then started my other work, and then took to theatre. And I began by working as usher, then backstage. You see, that time we didn't have unions. They were advertising on the windows.
Yes.
When so many people are required. And I used to go, and I got enrolled, as it were. And then somebody told me, don't work for one place. There are all these theatre require. So that's
Right.
I did, and it was wonderful. You see, that's where it all began. And I spent many an evening. Of course, they pay appallingly, but
A pittance.
a pittance.
Yes.
But that didn't matter. It did not, the pittance that I went there for. And I was often called to be backstage. In the same way, you take Boston. Boston is England's first cities which they were built with old England, about old England.
Right.
You see, so it has a coupled with that, I enjoyed the East Coast very much.
Right.
Very much. So from New Hampshire, all those little states had they were a combination English architects and even in their furniture. So that's what I enjoyed that a lot, and then of course I worked in Broadway in the same manner.
Right.
You see, by time there was no union, so one could have gone to it and done that kind of work.
Right.
But now the difficulties, as you know better than I,
with the unions and the guilds.
Yeah, and
yes.
they have that because there are reasons for it, so that nobody will be underpaid or
Taken advantage of.
Exactly.
Yes.
So even a little stage hand has to be has to have a union card.
Yes.
I remember. But of course, I mean, as time went on, I remember when I was in London, I also had to get, later on, I did get a union card, and
Eventually.
eventually I had to get it because then it became compulsory after a while.
Because I think what happens, Jith, is when we live overseas, we really appreciate, everyone from the stagehand and the bartender all the way up to the glamorous producer and the restaurateur, as it were. Because I think a lot of people who live in Colombo are insulated from many facets of life. And I think the beauty of living overseas is that we have an even greater appreciation, like you said, of our own country and our own culture. Because I think what happens is when we're abroad and people ask us about our country, which is Paradise Island, as I describe it to my American friends, we really have to reflect on what makes us so special when we talk about our country to our foreign friends. And I think that makes us appreciate our own culture and our own history.
Yeah, that certainly happened.
In a way that I think people who have only lived in Sri Lanka sometimes take all that for granted.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I must confess that that's exactly how I felt too. It is only after I came back that I really travelled in Sri Lanka also.
Right.
I can't believe it. It is only my father had forced me and took me to some of these places of great interest in Sri Lanka. But it's only afterwards that I really appreciated. After I saw but it's more the way they have preserved those things. I feel sad sometimes why their preservation is not yet got into the blood of the country. So it's only now they are getting excited and thinking about environment and helping around.
Right.
Because that interest is grown quite a lot, especially among the youth. I must say, they are much more knowledgeable and aware of the environment, so that they're helping. That is helpful. And
Jith, one thing you've said about the environment, which will always stay with me, is Jith is an ardent Christian, but he's told me, Gehan, God will punish people as much for harming the environment as he would for harming other human beings, because the environment is also God's creation.
I think more. I think much more. You see, because that's his handiwork, his special handiwork. They don't realize that.
Right.
You see,
right.
Cutting a tree, a beautiful tree, is, I think, in my opinion, far worse than killing a human being.
I agree with you, Uncle, because trees are, and going back to that theme of innocence, trees are innocent, harmless. They live to fill the world with beauty and majesty, and human beings, unfortunately, sometimes fall far short of that ideal of beauty and majesty.
Absolute ignorance, that's right.
Yeah.
In and around Colombo, now you get these trees, yet the huge trees with all those lovely roots hanging around. That tree is 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
And 900 years old, 800 years old, you see.
Yeah.
They should be venerated as we pass by. You see, that's But anyway, I must say, the world over, Gehan, there's a large amount of people, youth, who have begun to realize its importance.
Yes.
Yeah. So there is a movement worldwide. It is amazing how there were people, children from Pakistan to Scandinavia to Latin America, all of them are behind the same cause and with the same fervor.
Yes.
It's really thrilling to see them active. They go and sacrifice their lives and they demonstrate in this, against countries. And that, so there is a faint hope for mankind. There's a faint hope.
Thanks to the current generation.
Current generation.
And I agree with you.
Because at the rate of ice is melting, I don't expect the Earth to go on for longer.
For much longer.
Yeah. But it's wonderful to see this kind of...
the fervor of the youth, which I can relate to, because I remember in 2012, the year before I moved to Hollywood, the only time I took to the streets here in Colombo to engage in a protest of any kind was when they were, I think, planning to cut down some of those ancient trees near our University of Colombo.
Yes, of course, yes.
And I took to the streets with, placards, and I was vociferous about this.
And you stopped it, they stopped it.
And we stopped it, exactly, and that was a victory for me.
It's, Thurston Road has its trees still.
Yes.
Well, Ward Place and Barnes Place is full of trees.
Absolutely.
Everyone was like Horton Place, thank God it's still there.
Yes.
These roads too.
Yes.
Ward Place was quite dark actually. You see, now all this, this and all the trees have been cut down. You see?
I know.
And Barnes Place again. I don't know how it happened. I can't understand why. You see, and because they have the houses have expanded to the road.
Yes.
Yes. But yet I can't understand why those trees don't exist anymore. You see?
Because, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are not in Colombo, Ward Place, Barnes Place, Horton Place, Rosamond Place, all of this comprises, Colombo 7 is comprised of all these different lanes and streets. And, even when I was growing up in the late 80s and throughout the 1990s, all these streets and pathways were lined with beautiful trees.
Yes.
And like Jith said, it has been very sad to see our little haven, our little piece of heaven here decimated little by little. But
thank God to the Vihara Devi park.
Yes.
There it's preserved, and somehow that has survived. But of course, the strange thing is, Gehan, when you're flying over Colombo, take a look and see. This is all green. It's completely green. The vision from upstairs is not quite
what we experience down here in Colombo.
But when we go flying over it, the Colombo is all green. So at least there's some hope. But there is a lot of hope, because now at least the children they won't allow the tree to be. That's world over. And my goodness, we have. That is why I say that there's hope for mankind. So thank God for that.
And I think that's such a beautiful note on which to end the show, Jith, because your hope for mankind, your hope for the next generation is something that will empower so many young people, not only young people who watch this show, but also the hundreds, if not thousands, of young people who you continue to mentor. Jith continues to give back to the future generations, and I think it has truly been an honor for me, not only on this show, but even in real life, to have untold conversations with you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And I will return the compliment that we are one of the very, 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 very few youth who could carry on with the same fervor from beginning to end when we talk of issues, or with the same interest that I have. So I am very thankful for your company.
Although I must confess before we end, ladies and gentlemen, I was a little nervous today because I'm so in awe of Jith. He says issues, not issues. So I've always been very mindful of my speech throughout this particular show, and I've stuttered and stumbled a little bit because you are Jith Pieris, and we all look up to you, and thank you, Jith.
Thank you.